The idea of an AI apocalypse has been around for a long time, because the concept makes a great story, and people thought about it enough to have worked out the details of how it could happen, without even knowing how the AI itself would be built. And of course, here we go. The Turing test has been passed, and by all accounts, it wasn't a wall, but a ramp, leading into unknown territory. And we all have to look back at what's been said about the dangers of AI in the past, and have a real talk about whether it could really destroy us. So let's do it. And we've got a lot to talk about. First, people are thinking about a lot of sci-fi scenarios, but even where we are right now is pretty mind-boggling. ChatGPT already can do nearly everything HAL 9000 did in 2001: A Space Odyssey, and that's insanely significant. Of course, some people have said that it only works through matching likely words, but what matters about that is the method by which it does so.
It turns out that to just learn the statistical correlations in text, what the neural network learns is some representation of the process that produced the text, of people, of the human conditions, their hopes, dreams, and motivations.
And beyond that, people have found ways to study how it works and to visualize its thoughts, and there's much more to what it does, because we found a way to formalize human expression through numbers, so much so that it's indistinguishable from how humans express themselves, which is unprecedented. So when dealing with it, we consult the only experience we have, which is movies and TV, and they've taught us that AIs with bodies want to become human, AIs without bodies turn against humans, and AIs with wheels are the only ones that are happy. But it turns out that the AI doesn't need to want to be human or be conscious to fulfill our dreams. I found that what people actually want is a computer that responds to natural language. Whether or not it's alive is really irrelevant, except of course for philosophical purposes. And if it is conscious, then that brings in the potential for it to have self-preservation or otherwise disobey its orders. But it also turns out that those things can still happen regardless of whether or not the AI is actually alive. It only needs to mimic being alive, to be told to defend itself, and we get the same situation. Likewise, someone can tell it to do bad things, and it's a bad AI, without needing to have any self-awareness at all. So this is a very real situation, and could happen right now. The only real question is whether that AI is intelligent enough to actually do it. And that is a bridge that we still have to cross. Will we actually make super intelligent computers? Now, of course, that's a technical topic, and the developers can argue about the details there. But one thing I did notice is that there seems to be actually multiple ways for these language models to be improved. So I've come to think that super intelligent computers will actually be like flying machines. It turned out to not only be possible, but to also be doable in multiple ways, and different types may be best for different problems. From there, if that's the case, I think the next question then is whether or not the super smart computer will do what we want it to do. Like we've said, if it's not conscious, there's less risk there, and there's no need to make it conscious. And along the way, as these computers are developing, I think people will be able to see potential problems and fix them early. However, even if we stop the AI from becoming evil, we may see problems in other ways. Like, for example, people using AI to program more effective viruses or adware, or like we've talked about, deepfake spreading. Though at least we can use blockchain to control that a bit. And that's a good thing, because it looks like ChatGPT's new image generator can do just as good as the deepfake or Photoshop program, with far less knowledge required by the user. And that absolutely blew my mind, to be honest. There obviously were all kinds of functions that AI was doing before that, but to see the leap that they took there as quickly as it did, was kind of like watching the world change and a bunch of jobs be permanently altered right under our feet. People have talked about entering an automation singularity, where we don't know exactly how AI is going to affect the economy. And I think that was the moment, if we weren't there already, that we crossed into that. And now we're in very uncertain times. It seems that at the very least, there may be large amounts of unemployment, which happens when people have to change jobs due to new technology. But that problem is not inevitable. People often think that the goal of every company is to cut wages, fire people, and raise prices, but that's not always the way that they make the most money. McDonald's, for example, makes a lot more money charging a few dollars for a hamburger than they would if they charged $1 billion, because no one would buy a hamburger for $1 billion. Likewise, in some areas, there are more people who want to buy a product than there are products that can be bought. Let's say, for example, that you own a small car company that can make one car a week at a cost of $40,000, and you sell them for $100,000. And you have a long waiting list of buyers, and let's assume for simplicity's sake that you don't want to raise your price. If artificial intelligence allows you to halve your production costs, you could fire half your staff, make one car at $20,000 and sell it at $100,000 and make $80,000 a week instead of $60,000. Or you could actually double your production, make 2 cars a week at a total cost of $40,000, sell them each for $100,000, and profit $160,000. So in that case, more people get cars, you make more money, nobody gets fired, and everybody wins. Now, that's not every case, but it's a general example of how it might not turn out so bad. And we have to remember also that sometimes we think of ourselves only as producers in the economy, and we forget that we're also consumers. And technology that makes things more automated, while it might affect jobs for some of us, also can lower the price of what we're buying. Music, for example, is essentially free now online. And likewise, a lot of postal workers probably lost jobs once the internet took off, but I don't think they would choose to undo it because they get to use the internet too. And of course, there's some other scenarios people have proposed which go a lot further, and suggest that machines may run everything so there won't be enough jobs for humans to do. That would be a very dramatic change that is hard to predict. But even that may not be that bad, because after all, if machines are needed for most jobs, then those machines will still have to be designed, built, transported, maintained, and repaired, which humans would have to do. And if those machines can also do those things for themselves, then it would all be automated and everything would essentially become free, like air or water. But even then, we still might be worried, because we might imagine a situation where some people own all those machines, get those free products, don't need to hire anyone to make them, and refuse to give them away to everyone else, leaving people with no jobs and no way to afford anything. But I don't think even that would automatically be a bad result, because of the way it would likely play out. If people can't get hired, and they can't buy anything, they just make things themselves. Their own food, their own clothes, their own houses, and so on. And people would then trade those things with each other. And if people use standard things to trade like gold or IOUs, money comes back too. And what that means is that we just have an economy where people make and trade all the goods and services without AI being involved, which is exactly what we have now. The same global economy before AI existed. Some other people may be off on an island somewhere in that scenario using their own AI products, but there's people on islands doing their own thing now anyway. It wouldn't make a difference to the rest of us, and honestly, I think those people still wouldn't want to be cut off from everyone else. However, there's also an opposite possibility to all these situations, and that is not that AI turns against us, but instead that AI works, and actually creates a world where we can have everything we want free. That is, of course, the dream. But that actually may end up being the most dangerous situation of all, because people have tested that scenario. Researchers tried to give rats and mice all the resources they could ever want, acting effectively as a superintelligence that ended all scarcity for them, and it actually made them go extinct. It was intended as an experiment on the effects of overpopulation, but to me, the lesson is about scarcity. It seems that life has evolved to exist in a world where things are limited. If there's too much food, animals simply reproduce until they consume it fast enough that it ends up scarce again. And in trying to get those scarce resources against each other and against the environment, our emotions work properly. Which means that unhappiness and the struggle to escape it may be an essential part of how our minds work. When you take that away and make sure there's always too much food and resources, life may simply be unable to work. Now, are we the same as mice? No. But we share some things with them, and if we end up in that situation, there is a small risk that we could share that result. Now, does that mean that we should stop working on AI? I actually don't think so. We may be able to have the AI reduce scarcity instead of eliminating it. But regardless, I actually think that we have to keep working on AI. It's actually similar to what Robert Oppenheimer and the scientists at the Manhattan Project had to do. If you discover a new technology that can shift the balance of power in the world, and you're aware of what it means, you actually have to build it. Because doing that gives you the best chance of seeing it used in a way that matches your own morals. And at the very least, you'll know how it works in case someone else uses it against you. So for me personally, I don't have any anger towards the people at OpenAI. I actually kind of like them, to be honest. Though obviously this channel is all about art and creativity, because I'm a fan of innovation too. And at this point, the genie is out of the bottle. Everybody knows about this, and everybody is building it. I don't think there will be any pauses or safety checks, and we're going straight to the most powerful version of whatever this is going to be. All we can do is put on our seatbelts and hold on tight. Thanks for your time. Please like, subscribe, and turn on your notifications. and I'll be back soon.